Welcome to the Fervent 4. Did you know that only 4% of businesses ever cross the annual $1 million revenue mark? You know, after like 60 plus episodes of this, you would think I have this memorized, but no, I might still have to read on a piece of paper or a Google Doc. Hello, I'm Zack Miller, author of Anomaly. With me today, I have my co-host Tim Ryan, lead man at StartWheel.org. Thank you so much for joining us. The Fervent 4 is a weekly show each and every Thursday at 11 a.m. dedicated to sharing insights into growing a world-class business no matter the climate. Micah Miller, not my brother, probably no relation, is the managing member of Easton Outdoors, and he joins us today. Micah, what's up, buddy?
What's up, Micah?
All right, so I sent you a message a few months ago because I was asking our first guest ever, Eric McManus of Instant Teams. Did I mess that up? What's the old name? That it is Instant Teams now.
It used to be Mad Skills.
Yeah. Got it. I was like, uh-oh, I hope I didn't mess that up. I reached out to her and I said, who would be a good guest for the show? She said that you would be a great guest, and you straight up ghosted me. You ghosted me for a while, and I just got to get this off my chest, man. Like what? Why? Why are you doing that? Because it sounds like actually like a little bit before the show, you said that like you get a lot of requests for like a lot of different things, not necessarily shows, but just like things that seem, I believe the word you used was junk.
In the pre-show notes, man, this is his way of he learned how to say no. So by ghosting, that was his way of telling you no.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I don't think I followed up, so I was a bad salesman in that case. But Erica actually had reached out, like, "Where is it?" Like, and I'm like, "I don't know." Like,
yeah, and then she got me on it as well.
So shout out to Erica for doing that. So why do you ghost people? Do you ghost a lot of people that reach out to you, or just not a lot of podcast style requests come through? It's more people trying to get you to buy something from them.
Yeah, so it's a mixture. I definitely get a lot of requests for stuff to go on our website because we have a decent amount of content on our website. So there's always people reaching out. They're like, "Hey, can you put a plug in there for us? Can you can we record a video with you that we can put on your website to talk about our product?" Or so we just get all kinds of questions and emails, and sometimes it's for podcasts, sometimes it's for Pinterest, sometimes it's, "Hey, we can get you 1 million followers on Instagram." So I just every single one of them, including Zack Miller, goes to the junk.
I love that I did not stand out there. That means that I have to work on that a little bit. But we can help you get a link to your website from this and that. Right. I mean, I don't know. Is that still like the number one strategy from an SEO perspective, Tim? Like it, or is it just a strategy to get backlinks like that?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly want to link back, and that certainly helps. But I don't know. What are you doing so that people want to have their stuff cross-linked on your site?
So we follow I don't know if you guys know Marcus Sheridan. Marcus Sheridan wrote a book called They Ask, You Answer. And essentially the idea of his book is you want to become a market expert. You want to become the resource so that when people think about doing something in my space, it may be patios, it may be landscaping, water features. When they think about those, that I'm really the only person that they think about because I'm just always creating content. I'm answering questions. I'm kind of more just there as a resource. And then when it finally comes time to make it actually happen, they're just like, "Oh yeah, Micah Miller," or, I saw his post on this, or I saw his blog on that, or I saw his picture on this. Yeah.
That's really interesting. So is that in terms of content creation, is that stuff that you do, or do you have a staff that does that? Because I
generate most of it.
Do you really? That's really interesting, just in the sense of a lot of companies or different people that I talk to is like, man, like, do you do this during a rainy day? Because like a lot of times it's like, man, when there's a rainy day, it's like, all right, man, we got to tune up all of the equipment, make sure that everything is good to go. But you're sitting back and you're creating content. Is that what goes on?
Yes and no. So part of our, the base of our company is content creation in the first place. So, Facebook Lives, posting stuff on Instagram, just generating the actual content. So taking pictures of your work and just showing people what you're doing. It doesn't have to be glamorous. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be always there, always present, just always happening. And so that's like, if we're always just showing up, it's hard to beat a man that just shows up for his job every day. So it's just part of our culture. It's part of our DNA in our company. It's just to, take pictures of stuff, post it, put it out there.
I was trying to find, so in my book, Anomaly, How to Finally Stand Out with the Crowd, I swear I wrote this chapter, but I couldn't find it. So maybe I didn't. Maybe it's in book 2. But where it's basically like people hide behind their FAQs where they don't, like, people ask 3 to 5, basically the same 3 questions over and over again. And they wait until they're behind closed doors to actually answer that question. And my theory is just get out in front of that and answer that every single time over and over and over again. Because if you're getting the same questions over and over, why don't you, and you answer that question for free, why would you hide behind a wall, if you will? And so maybe I didn't write it in the book. Maybe it's just something I thought about right now, but
I couldn't agree more. And one thing you'll notice about our website is what would be the number one question if you wanted something in your backyard? I paint this grand vision of everything we can do. What are you going to ask about that? Everyone asks
price, probably.
Exactly. How much does that cost? So if you go on our website, almost everything has a price tag on it, or a range, a ballpark, because we want people who kind of have an idea of what to expect. Why hide behind that taboo? Why make that something you can't find?
It is interesting because you go to a dealership, the first thing you want to do is, how much does this thing cost? And so, like, there's plenty of companies that I advise or that I work with, and they're like, no, we don't want to put the price out there. And I'm like, why? Like, they're going to figure it out at some point. They're either the right fit or they're not. You might as well just put that somewhere in there pretty quickly. And if someone can't afford you, guess what? You're not wasting your time on the phone with them being like, oh, I can't afford this thing. And so I don't know why people get so angry at that. Like,
well, that's what I tell everyone too. It's like, man, once you differentiate yourself on price, you've lost. I mean, you've got to do. I mean, it's like, man, if you're a dollar store, I mean, you go into that place, it's a complete disarray, disaster. There's zero customer service. I mean, there's nothing else you can do.
Yeah, they got dollar balloons, Tim. They have dollar balloons. That's the best place to get that's the best place to get a balloon.
I don't know. We unless you bring your balloons there, we brought balloons there, and it was helium's more than $1 if you. But anyway,
interesting. So what? You want to ask this question? You want me to, Tim?
Go.
Well, so give me the elevator pitch of what is Eastern Outdoors.
Yeah. Well, I have to kind of correct you. It's Easton.
Man. First you ghost me, and then I mess up your name. I mean, I'm batting 1,000. I'm leaving the studio. Easton Outdoors. That's what I said. I don't know why I said Eastern. Easton. Okay. So, Micah, tell me about Easton Outdoors. What is it?
Yeah. So we are the #1 water feature company in Hampton Roads. We are working to become the #1 outdoor living company in Hampton Roads.
Man, there you go.
I have nothing else to say. That's great. How often did you have to figure out kind of the vernacular behind that, or figuring out kind of the changing of different words in there that worked for you? Or you just kind of are like, this is what we are, and didn't spend a lot of time on it?
Yeah, we wrote it on the board in 2018. We will become the #1 water feature company in Hampton Roads. And that kind of became a realization when 2 things happened. Beginning of this year, we built a water feature in front of Bass Pro in Hampton. And they reached out to us and asked us to do it, and nobody else bid against us for the job. And that was the first water feature that has ever been rebuilt at a Bass Pro ever. And it was the first water feature that's ever been built at a Bass Pro that was not built by a subsidiary or a direct employee of a Bass Pro company. So that was kind of a crowning moment for us.
That's interesting. What so like one of the premise of our show here is we want to give folks the tips and knowledge they need to hit that $1 million mark with their business. I would think that with something that you're doing with outdoor water features, I mean, it's kind of like, hey, if you can think it, we can do it kind of deal. But yeah. So as you running this business, how do you approach opportunities when you're here, when you're hearing someone's vision on what they want to do, Do you just figure it out? You say, yep, we'll figure it out, and you're transparent? Or do you shy away on things because you don't know if it's possible? I find that there's so many business owners out there that are trying to start their business. They're so afraid to step out into that out of their comfort zone, or they want that perfect job description before they sign themselves up to do it. I don't think that you're in a business or an industry that you can do that. You've got to kind of just get out there and just, hey, we'll figure it out and we'll make it happen. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So for us, I think a lot of it starts with actually the client training. So setting the expectation way before you ever have your first conversation with them. And that goes back to our content creation, what we're putting out there. We're showing our actual work real time. We're showing our jobs that we've completed. So when somebody comes to us and they ask for something specific, if it's not something that looks like we've done in the past, we actually say no. We've niched down. We've got a skill set that my team is very talented at, and they don't like to necessarily change the way things are going to look. There's a few options you can pick and a few ways that you can change it, but for the most part, if they're asking for something that doesn't look like something we've created, we say no.
Was the work that you did for Bass Pro, was that something that you've done before, or was that way out of your comfort zone?
No, it matched exactly the kind of work that we're doing in the past, and
Wow.
the rock waterfalls. A lot of times we'll get people request we build like a slate waterfall. We use all boulders, and we kind of say no for that. Sometimes we'll get people ask for water features that maybe won't fit the space that they have, and so as our purpose is to become the expert and kind of a teacher, we kind of guide them to finding that perfect waterfall for their space or that perfect water feature for their space, and budget plays a large factor in what they can put in that space.
Okay, so you run a business that is, I think a lot of people would be like, you do a lot of things online. That's really odd. That's really weird. You just do things in my backyard, in my front yard, whatever. Why would you spend so much time online? And then I'm hearing certain things that are really, really interesting. So you're marketing yourself kind of on an ongoing basis. If you think about an amusement park or a new roller coaster that's being opened, they're constantly showing you the footers going in, the next rung of the roller coaster going up. And then when it opens, you're like, this is great. And so it sounds like you're kind of showcasing that along the way. And I think that's wonderful. And then another thing that I think is quite interesting that most people don't do is the whole client training aspect of it, so that you're ready, they're ready for you even before the dotted line comes there. Is this all just like Marcus Sheridan stuff, or where did you kind of learn to grasp online in a business that has inevitably nothing to do with being online?
Right. So Tom Reber, Contractor Fight, he's the reason that I've done all of this. None of these are my ideas. Marcus Sheridan is kind of Tom Reber pushed the line, and this is where things need to go. The content creation is how people are going to find you, trust you, know you. And then Marcus Sheridan kind of perfected that. So Marcus Sheridan has a company, he's a silent partner now, River Pools and Spas, and they're out of Warsaw, Virginia. And in 2008, his business completely disappeared. All the pools that they were installing, all the work that they were doing just completely disappeared. And he talks about this in his book. And he kind of got to a point where he didn't know what they were going to do because they didn't have work coming in. So he started just blogging. And I believe it was within 18 months, they were the #1 trafficked website in the world for swimming pools, because he just started creating content. And of course, any question that anybody could ever ask about a pool, he's like, well, let me put it up there. So how much does, concrete versus fiberglass, right? He wrote something about that, and he gave prompts.
What happens when you float your liner at a pool? Anything like that, right? Like
anything like that. Yep. And they only do fiberglass pools, but he spent a lot of time talking about the pros of concrete or the pros of vinyl, because that's what people were searching for. So he'd bring them into the site. He'd talk about his competitors. He would talk about what's going on with them. So Tom Reber has a very disciplined style of making sure you're making the content, making sure you're getting it out there, kind of talk about what you're doing, show people, teach them. And then Marcus Sheridan has a very here's kind of like all the reasons why, and here's kind of like what the psychological things you're trying to do by creating the content, and here's how it's worked for me and what's happened.
So I'd be willing to bet that there's a ton of other companies like yours across the country, across the world, that are also playing the content game, but it doesn't seem to be working for them. They're not able to drive the traffic, right? So at the end of the day, like if you're not driving traffic to those pages, it doesn't really work. So what have you been doing to be able to drive people to the site?
Yeah. So I don't know the right way to word this, but I feel like a lot of us, we create content, or we do the work that needs to be done in order to drive people to our website. So what would be the work? It would be doing live videos. It would be posting pictures. It would be sharing your articles. It would be using your website to sell. So if somebody's asking for, what is the best type of lighting, and they're a prospect, a new person coming, client potentially, you're sharing that website with them. You're posting your website all over the place, articles that you've written. You're doing email campaigns. You're just constantly generating, and eventually it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but you can do all of those things. And this is my opinion now. You can do all of those things, but if you don't do them with the right intention or the right motivation, or if you're not putting the right amount of effort into them, you're just checking a box off, right? Post it on social media.
What's the right? So what's the right intention then? What's the right motivation?
So if you're just trying to check a box, like, hey, I posted on social media today, what are you going to post? You're just going to post something, right?
Yeah.
Who cares what it is? You're just going to be like, I just checked that box. If your intention is, like for us, we change our clients' lives by changing the way they live outside. That's our goal. So if I'm posting something, how do I make sure that our client knows that that's what our mission is without actually telling them? What's our intent behind our content? What's the intent behind our teaching?
The way I describe that, and I don't know if you've ever heard me say this, Tim, but is, would you engage with your own content? Right. So if your content isn't something that you personally would go and engage with, then you're probably not putting in the effort that's necessary to put it out there. Because there's a lot of people that are like, oh, post a ton of content in a day. I'm like, well, I mean, that's not necessarily that difficult, but is there meaning behind that? And would you engage with 100 pieces of that content a day? And I think oftentimes it becomes a quantity play rather than a quality. And I think it needs to be reversed. And it sounds like you do too. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Tim?
Yeah, I'm curious so you pay a lot of attention to content, making sure you're posting the right stuff. You have the right mix. In terms of like a metrics kind of point of view, what numbers do you pay attention to the most, and how do you adjust according to those numbers?
So from a social media standpoint, what numbers are we paying attention to, or just as a company?
Or social media, web traffic, just whatever you're doing from an outbound marketing standpoint.
I would say the number one thing that we're tracking is when somebody comes into our website, how long do they stay there? Where do they go on the website? What's interesting? So like, what search terms are they using to get into our website? How long are they staying there? And then where did they end up? And what site or what page are they actually leaving on? We're not so much looking at our bounce rate, because we do have a high bounce rate. We're not always looking at that. We're just trying to figure out, like, where are they going while they're on the site, and why are they staying on that page? And then, HubSpot has this really cool thing where if they've actually filled a contact form, now every single page that they've looked at and everywhere they've been on the page. So now like, oh, they spent a lot of time looking at this one that had hot tubs, and they also spent a lot of time looking at outdoor lighting. So by the way, Miss Jones, were you interested in doing outdoor lighting?
Where did you learn these skills?
That was my question.
Marcus talks a lot about it in his book, and then it's just one of those things where you have to start, and then.
So you do it. You don't hire an outside firm to do it?
No, I have help. I definitely have help. I generally generate all the pictures. I have my team. They do live videos as well, and they share pictures with me. But I do a lot of the actual, like, almost everything that's posted is actually me. Almost everything you've seen written on our website is actually me.
Do you train your staff on how to? Do you train your staff on how to take those pictures the right way? I mean, does it really matter in those things? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, because
you're an anomaly in the sense of all. I mean, I'm sure that you have to be maybe 1% of the people in your industry that's doing what you're doing. And of the 70, your episode 70 that we've had on, and maybe one or two others pay attention to those
The
types of
content game
things.
like that, yeah.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I would think that most of those businesses have done decent for themselves as well, right? I mean, it's
100%.
not like it's not like they're slugs. It's just some do better than others. So it's interesting. How important do you think like from a pitcher perspective, because I do think that pitchers do matter, and having something like this is a lot easier to take a picture than before. But how important, I mean, what you're taking a picture of in general, like people are looking for something like that from a social perspective. Like, how do you get those people to engage on mulch, on a stone? Like, what are you doing to pull people? I mean, because Gavin,
Yeah, I think it's a great question.
Throw up some images so we can find it, or I'll go look at a link or something. But like, what are you doing to get people excited about mulch? Because last time I checked, mulch isn't that exciting and it's dead.
So, I mean,
you don't agree with that? I mean, mulch is dead, right? I mean, come on, man. Like, don't ghost me for a third time today. I'm messing.
No response. Yeah, but we're not selling mulch, right? We're not selling boulders. We're not selling pavers. We're not selling even lights. We're selling a place that people can live outside. We're selling a place where people can enjoy the outdoors. We're selling a place where you can smoke a cigar and drink a bourbon with your friend. We're selling a place where you can watch your kids on their Strider bike for the first time crash into your wall. We're creating a place where experiences happen.
Yeah, that was the word I was looking for, experiences. I was waiting for you to say it. Yeah, I mean, that's it. You're creating an at-home experience for people, and that's powerful.
Yeah. That's why.
What's the number one thing that people are searching for on a day where it's 95 degrees like it is today, heat index of 110, and it's like last thing people want to do is go outdoors, so how do you offset that? Is it, because I don't think like a misting station or something like that where they have in a low humidity place is going to really do anything for you. So what do you?
Yeah. When is Water Country
personally
open?
Interested.
When does Water Country close? When does Water Country open? Is Apollo's Chariot open?
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know that we're necessarily. We do pay attention to our SEO, but when I'm looking to write a new blog, I go and I search and I say, okay, like waterfalls, ponds, patios, what are people searching for? And so we have like one that the biggest question that I found was, how much does an outdoor kitchen cost? So I wrote a blog on what goes into an outdoor kitchen, how much does it cost, what material choices are there, what grills are there, can you put an ice maker in it, can you put a sink? Another question we'll get often is, like what kind of plants can I put in my water feature? And we saw that people were searching for that. So we wrote a blog about, hey, you can put these kind of plants in your water feature. We've gotten, like a lot of questions were like, hey, we want to plant grass and it's spring. And it kind of made me upset that people were trying to plant grass in the spring. Everybody knows it's obvious you're not supposed to plant grass in the spring. I don't know why people don't get it through their head. So I wrote a blog about when's the best time to plant grass. See, Zack.
Well, clearly, it's clearly not obvious, right? I mean, but that's interesting that you're saying that. But I think it gets the crux of the thing is you're so knowledgeable in this thing. I think sometimes we have to dummy guide it out and be like, hold on. Of course, everyone knows but people don't. Right. And so you have to be like, when's the best time to plant grass? What type of grass do I have? What type of this? And so it's really interesting. As I just scrolled through, I don't know if you could see it on the screen, but I was scrolling through part of the site. And what I appreciate is that it's not just a before and after. There's a before and there's an after, but there's all this stuff in between. So I feel like that is a part of kind of the client training as well, so they can kind of grasp what to expect, right? And so one of our friends, Gary Plagg, Plugi, whatever his last name is, Tim, is showing the process of his house being built. And so it's literally every few days, and you're seeing that construction go up. And so it's not, oh, bought this land, oh, there's the final. You're seeing the whole thing go up, and it's taking, as he's even saying, longer than you would expect. But you're seeing that whole aspect of it, and I think that's important. And more people need to show, I don't know, the behind the scenes stuff so that your clients are expecting it. Well, in no matter what you're doing, right? Like a lot of stuff that's popular from a fast food restaurant now is, how did you make my Big Mac? Right. And so there's these kids that are 15 to 18-year-olds that are like putting together Big Macs at McDonald's and stuff like that. And they're showing how they're being done. What's interesting is some companies are really getting mad at those kids for doing it, and they're banning them, even though they're getting milk. I mean, how hard is it to put 2 pickles, some two all beef patties, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions, whatever? Like, but it's interesting that they would get mad at that instead of just get behind it, like you guys are doing, because it's the same process. I mean, it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how would the whole 2020 experience that doesn't seem to want to go away, how would that work out for you? I would think that everybody's
Don't
staying
say that,
home.
Tim.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I do feel, we said it the entire year. It's like everybody else is struggling. Everybody else is even people inside of our industry were having a hard time adjusting to what was going on. And we legitimately sat down and we were like, what do we do? How do we address this? And so a couple things really, really worked in our favor. The first thing is almost all of our sales are done via phone. Prior to 2020, the way our sales process works is a client reaches out to us, and either they get me or they get Charlie or they get our website, one of those 3 things. Charlie's my office manager. And at that point, we'll ask them for pictures of their yard. And we'll say, send in what's going on in your yard. Send us, 3, 5 pictures at most of your yard. And let's just talk about it. So then they schedule a time with me, like an actual, like, hey, we're going to talk at 11 o'clock on the phone. And we'll talk about what's going on in their yard. And I really want to hear what they see. I'm not trying to tell them what they see. I'm like, tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what's going on. And then as that process starts to unfold, I'll actually start sending them pictures of work that we've done. I'll start sending them links from our website. I'll start sending them videos from our YouTube channel or Facebook posts that we've done. So I start.
This is all just done via email?
This is all done
like
while I'm on the phone, using my phone to text them pictures of stuff. So
oh my gosh, you can't do that. How dare you text your potential client?
How dare you change it?
How dare you do that? Like, why wouldn't you do that? Like, you have this thing.
I'm on the phone and we're having this
awesome
flow. Yeah. And so, towards the end of that conversation, every conversation has a flow, right? It's just, I have stages to each conversation. Some customers or clients will go, they'll instead of going A, B, C, D, they'll go A, D, C, E, and jump back and forth. But we have, our 5 steps to every sales call. And one of that part is the price. So you've seen what I can do. You've told me what you want. I've shared pictures with you of what your yard could be. What if I just took care of it for 20 grand? And then they just shut up.
And you hear kind of how they process that, whether they love it, they don't. You have a ballpark.
How long did it get used to you to say 20 grand and then shut up and let that silence just eat away at you before you want to say something? How long did that take to train yourself? Because people are scared to death of that silence, and it seems like eternity.
Yeah, I actually had a guy, he hung up on me.
No, I'm glad someone hung up on you like you ghosted me. That's appropriate after all this.
I told him the price, and I just shut up. He was telling me all about how he was a used car salesman, and he couldn't believe some of these other companies didn't have sales processes and all this stuff. And I told him, he told me exactly what he wanted. He had a quote from somebody else. I told him the exact price, and I just shut up.
Where are you in that spectrum of what that cost is? right? Like, because I'm sure there is a range of kind of what you are guiding them towards, right?
Yeah.
The, small, medium, large, if you will, right? And so, like,
Yeah.
are you giving them the medium? Like, where do you giving people historically that price of where you feel? And it's not final, but I mean, that's the first number that they hear. So that's the number that they're going to be using and expecting if that thing isn't,
Yeah.
the Ritz-Carlton, if you will.
And occasionally I'll ask, if I don't have a perfect picture of what they're wanting, I'll say, what were you hoping to spend in this space? What were you hoping to spend on the backyard? And usually a client is, after we're having a very candid conversation, a very open conversation, and I'm being real with them and they're being real with me. Most clients will just say, I was expecting to spend 20 to 30 grand. And I'll say, okay, I can make it work, or I can't make it work.
What's the average you think yard that you do?
Our average project across the board, because we have 3 different, departments, if you will, our average spend is $8 grand.
Got it.
Yes, I mean, hats off to you, man. I mean, it's just in terms of you listen to your customers, your clients. You've got a sales process that's put in place. You know what you're able to do. You know what your wheelhouse is, and then you've learned how to say no, and that's done really, really well for you. I mean, it just it's so difficult for so many people to figure that out, or even just ask the question of, hey, do you have a budget or an idea in mind on how much you want to spend? That's like a terrifying question for so many new entrepreneurs to ask.
Or old ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was why we were positioned well for 2020, because we had that phone process in place. We had content online because people were at home reading, people were at home researching. So people could go to our website. We have over 100 pages of content on our website, and they would just get lost in the website and then call me and then tell them. We had points where we had clients, I talked to them on the phone, I sold the job, I went to their yard, painted it out in their yard, what the design was going to be. And they would either FaceTime me or they would be on the phone while I'm walking in the yard. They would never come outside. And then they would slide like a $50,000 check underneath the glass door. I'm not making that up. They would just slide it and like, thank you. I just emailed you and accepted your proposal, on your website, on your via
because
email.
they feel comfortable with you because they've gone through that whole process. They get it. They appreciate that you came out that quickly and all that stuff.
They've stalked me. We're stalkable. You can.
Well, that's important. I want people
everything.
to stalk me too.
Yeah,
dude. Okay, so it's interesting. So I do a weekly email every Monday morning at 10:15 ish every single week. If you guys want it, zackmillersays.com/newsletter. And recently, I've been copying and pasting a chapter of my book just to see if anyone will notice it. Right, literally word for word. Actually, I'll take out, like, if I'm saying like the book or something, or this book, I'll change that just a little bit of a tweak. And someone the other day was like, "Oh, well, I was going to this meeting, and I was going to pull a chapter out from your book, and I started reading this thing, and I was like, I just read this morning." And so it's like that stalkerness is like, it's incredible, and that's what you want. But it's very hard to get people to stalk you. But these are positive things. That was just a random tangent, sorry. But I'm seeing a lot of 2020 like fees where, you saw lumber was really overpriced for a little while. I'm starting to see restaurants have signs up like, sorry if we can't provide you your normal thing because of whether that being staffing, food availability, et cetera, et cetera. Have you guys had to see anything? Has there been stuff like that in your world where you can't get materials, and if yes, which I'm seeing you say yes, how have you handled kind of getting that price increase to other people?
So I'll do materials and then I'll do employees, because they're 2 very different issues, but they're linked at the back end because we're having trouble getting supplies because of employees. But so our materials, so let's just take our average pond is a $12,000 pond. It's a 10 by 14 with an 8-foot stream. We sell that more than anything else on the water feature side. Our cost of our actual materials, so our boulders didn't go up, but our cost of the actual materials, the plastic, the liner, the tubs, everything like that, went up. We're at like almost, I think we're at 28% now. It was 22% until August 31st, and it just went up again. So we're at like 28% now that the cost of that has risen. The materials to make a 10 by 14 with an 8-foot stream cost us last year roughly, $2,800. So it's not a significant increase in the overall, $12,000 cost of the pond. So what we've done is we've passed that cost, that direct cost, on to the client. We did a 10% raise on the cost of our water features, and that covered, the rising cost of the equipment, materials, and everything like that. On the paver side, we've actually only seen a 3% increase, which they've pretty much always done, a 1 to 3% increase. So the paver side, the aggregates, the base, all that stuff has actually stayed almost exactly the same. It hasn't changed. So we've actually been able to leave that price roughly the same. We did put a 10% raise on that as well, because inflation is coming. I really want to get ahead of it. I don't want to wait until inflation is here and get caught by the wave. I would rather ride it, like endless summer style, chasing the wave around the world. So employees, one of the things that we've done, and this is, again, these are not my ideas. These are just things that a good coach taught me, and then I was able to put into place, was focus on culture, focus on creating a place where people like to work, where people will enjoy their job, give them a mission, give them a purpose, give them a team to buy into, and then treat them like humans. Don't bark at them. Don't tell them what they have to do. Give them the autonomy, give them the ability to kind of pick the work that they want to do, and then steer your team towards it. It wasn't just my idea to become the #1 water feature company in Hampton Roads. It was my team's idea. We came together and we decided that that's what we wanted to do. They have just as much buy-in. If they didn't want to do water features and they wanted to install plants instead, we would 100% right now be installing plants instead of putting boulders and liner in the ground. And I'm not perfect at it. I'm not trying to say like I'm the world's leading expert in creating a company culture, but I definitely take give them the initiative, give them the ability to say yes or no, give them the control of their schedule, give them direct contact with the client and through the experience, and then give them a place where they can fail, and it's not the end of the world if they fail. And sometimes that means kind of preparing the client for their failure. If because I'm the salesman, so if I know that they're probably going to fail in a certain area, kind of letting the client be ready to that they can be let down, or that they can kind of have that experience, and in training the client what to expect. So the team is the only reason we're able to do what we're doing. It's not me. I may bring the sales in and bring the leads to my team, but ultimately the fact that they have ownership of it is what's making it work.
I think a lot of people say that, and I think you can tell in your voice and just the way that you're dictating that that's probably a wrong word to say in that kind of way, but like that you're actually expressing that. You can tell it is real and natural, and it's something that really is important. And I think a lot of people will say that and be like, oh yeah, my team matters, culture matters. And then it's just like, it's just false.
The application is really hard. It's extremely hard. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I have to do this because I think it's hilarious. But that person that I was talking about actually apparently is watching here right now, stalking. I'm here and not stalking you. I mean, look, I'm just saying, like, that's exactly what we're looking for in this world, is people like this. Now, Kim, I need you to slide me under $50,000 check under your house, and I'll take some pictures outside, and we'll call it a day. Like that's all that's necessary. But I mean, like, not to throw her under the bus, but I mean, that was the story, and she saw it. And I appreciate her telling a chapter of my book to her networking group recently. So thanks. Appreciate it. Tim?
Yeah. So based on the culture you created, and as your business is growing, did you have to do anything to bring on additional staff? Are you experiencing the labor shortages that everyone else is facing right now? And is your culture what is making that easier, or are you facing the shortage just like everyone else is?
So the only reason right now that I would say we have a shortage is because we're growing. And what we've done, instead of just growing the actual company, is we've just decided to grow our wait list, because I feel like that's the only way that we can comfortably do it. We have brought on 3 new people this year, but none of them were actually in the field. So I brought on somebody that I'm training to, or who is training. He's taking the initiative and becoming the CEO. I brought somebody on to help with actual production and creating, making sure the workflow is going smooth. And then we brought on one person he's actually, I guess he is technically going to be in the field, but we knew we needed another water feature install crew. So looking forward to next year when I need to have somebody installing water feature crew, I don't want to just like, hey, now we've got another water feature crew. I just hired you, go out there, create. I hired him over a year in advance, and I put him on one of our crews. I got him set up with his own truck, his own phone, he's got his own crew set up, but he's actually on one of our existing teams, and he's working there on that team to get trained, so that at the end of his 18 months of training or so, he's not just like if I didn't give him that training, I'm not just like sending him out into the world. I'm giving him all the experience. I'm paying him like he's a team lead. I'm giving him the ability to make the judgment calls, and we're also giving him the place to fail in the same way that my other team leads have failed.
I want to touch on this because it's amazing here. So you talked about that you brought someone on that you want to have become the future CEO.
Yes.
I want to unpack that because that's another thing that you never, ever, ever hear anybody talk about. If anything, they may know deep down inside that I shouldn't be the face of this company. I don't have the skills to run this company. I can't grow this company, but they would rather let their company die than hire someone to offset their weaknesses and to grow a stronger company. Take us through why you're hiring your upcoming CEO.
Yeah. So I've got it on the board here, what my job description is and what positions that I do. I look at it every morning, and there are things inside of that job description that I absolutely loathe, but because I am, the head of the company, I have to do those positions. I have to fulfill that role, and I have to make those things happen so that we can move forward. Ultimately, I only want to be doing marketing. I only want to be doing sales. I don't want to handle the production. I don't want to handle the numbers. I don't want to handle picking up payments from clients other than the sale. There's a lot of things I don't want to be doing. So to reverse engineer that, who has to do those if I don't do them? And that means I have to have a CEO who's handling that kind of stuff. That means I have to have somebody who's tracking those numbers and who's making sure that we're staying profitable, and who's making sure that I have to have somebody who's making sure our production is staying where it is. I have to have somebody that, I'm able to cast a 2-year vision. I'm able to cast a 5-year vision. I'm able to cast the 6-month vision, but I don't want to actually make any of those happen. I have to make them happen right now because that's just where we are, and it's just a realistic expectation that I need to make this happen. But I'm slowly handing the reins to him. He's getting involved in our culture. He's getting involved in our direction, understanding our product, understanding our mission. And slowly he's just taking over each segment. And as he takes each segment, he gets a pay raise. So it's like, hey, I need you to take over this. I need it, to look. I actually don't even tell what I need it to look like. I tell him what it needs to be. So here's what the end result should look like. Just figure it out. Who, not how. I don't know if you've read that book, but that book has literally changed my life.
Do you actually read these or listen to them?
I listen. I don't read. Yeah, I know I'm that guy. But that who, not how mentality, where he's definitely my who. I don't need to tell him how. I just need to say, here's what I would like. You want the result, and then I give him time.
Him figure out how to do it.
Yeah. Give him space to fail.
How did you come up with the idea that you needed this person, and that the things that you just said that you wanted to do, basically the marketing of the business, was what you wanted to focus on? Like, I mean, is that just because you heard it enough in a book or something, or like, how did you come up with like, hey, I need someone else to do this thing?
So inside of that book, and this is, it's part of this, it was happening, but it was, going on before that. But one of the things that he says in the book is procrastination is wisdom. And I find it funny because my dad, my mom would always joke about my dad, he's the biggest procrastinator in the world. He'd always put off things. And ironically, the things that he was always putting off on were his greatest weakness. They were always the things that he struggled with the most. And, my dad ran his own business for 45 years and was a home builder in Williamsburg. And so I watched growing up, I watched my dad struggle with these, unique, they're not unique, struggles. And I watched, my mom kind of pushing him and kind of in a good way, kind of like, hey, take care of these things. And my dad would like deliberate is what we called it in the end, not procrastination, deliberation. And so procrastination is wisdom. So if there's something that you're procrastinating on, if there's something that you're deliberating on, if there's something that you're not taking action on, chances are it's because you don't get the fulfillment of the completed task. So if you're not fulfilled by that task, if you're not fulfilled by the actual completion of that job, then why are you doing it? You should only do things that actually make you fulfilled. And it doesn't mean you love your job 100% of the time. It could mean that you love your job only 3% of the time that you're doing it. But you should be doing things that you actually, that 3% is the completion of that task. You feel fulfilled. You feel like you're actually doing something. You're pushing, you're pushing the limit to so to speak. So procrastination is wisdom. If you're not being fulfilled by it, find somebody who is fulfilled by it, give them that task, and then you focus on only the things that you're getting fulfilled by.
That line is in that book, Procrastination is Wisdom, or that's what your mom said?
No, that's in the book. Yeah.
Yeah.
But just watching that is kind of how I learned a lot living through that. And then, hearing it in that book, it was like, yep, okay, I can't, I'm not going to be my dad,
It just makes me think of that commercial. I can't think of who it's for. I think it's an insurance commercial, though, about not becoming your parents.
It is. But yeah, that's a great commercial.
But that's fascinating, though. I don't know, Zach, how many founders have you seen that should not be the founders of the company or the face of the company, and they won't act on it?
A higher percentage than you would think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to be the face of the company. I just don't want to run the gears in the background.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's and so they mix that up, right? And so I don't know. Honestly, as I'm sitting here thinking about that, like I'm gonna Zack stat it out and say over 75% of people are not the ones who should be running that company. Probably because to have a lot of those, maybe more, maybe like 99% of those businesses, right?
And it's okay.
It's fine. I just think that like entrepreneurship in the last decade has been glorified where people really want to be famous and excited about it, which is great. But that doesn't, and I'm super excited that people want to be that, but that doesn't mean that that person who could be the face of the business should also be the one doing all this other stuff too. A lot of businesses too, you got to think about, and this is interesting that you're not this, is they're really good at a trade. And that trade is normally the business. And then like they have no business sense, but they are everything in the business because of that. And so it's hard to find a CEO. And then it's hard to have enough money, I think, in a lot of these cases when you know how much, if you look at just kind of your standard business, and most businesses don't have enough money to probably hire those additional C-level suites. I was listening to this guy recently who hired a CFO, and the reason he pulled the trigger on the CFO is because he didn't realize that he had $250,000 worth of money sitting in an account that he hadn't linked to a bank account until like a year later when he logged in. It was like, why is all this money on here? And he's like, well, the CFO would have known that.
Yep.
And like, where is this money? And because he was wearing too many hats. And I think it's there's a line though, right? Because at the beginning, I think a lot of businesses, they have to wear a lot of hats. But then as you grow, you have to like peel back the onion and be like, yo, like I can't be doing all this stuff. And I think more businesses need to recognize that and realize that it's not a bad thing. And don't be so prideful in your business.
It's a scale thing too, because there's I tell everybody on my team that we all have to wear multiple hats. We're not a corporation where the production manager can't step into operations and operations can't step into finances and finance. Like we're not big enough where you can just wear that one hat. And so being willing to cross the line and being willing to wear multiple hats, like I've worn all the hats for years, and you get used to it after a while. But it's important to know which hats you can take off when. It's because I think I see a lot of people, and I'm generalizing now, I'm sure, but I feel like I see a lot of businesses fail because the owner takes off a certain hat too soon or delegates a task without checking back in on it, or is not willing, kind of is like, doesn't have, there's a task that they're not very good at handling. They don't want to handle. So they put it on somebody else's plate, and then they never follow up to make sure that that task is happening correctly. And they never make sure that that person is equipped to make that happen. So as a result, that person ends up failing in that position because the owner, the founder, whoever wasn't willing to take responsibility to make sure they followed that task all the way to its completion in the proper sense. So it's good to take off hats, but you have to make sure you're taking them off with the money and the application.
I can think of my biggest business mistakes, at least financially, are when I made abrupt decisions that should have had more outsider information on, like more feedback from other people. Not necessarily from my team, but other people that I trust I could have been like, hey, here's what's going on. What do you think? And I can think of, a handful of things that had I reached out to a couple of people or been listening to books at the time, I probably wouldn't have made that decision and probably wouldn't have had to have gone through that, that financial loss, if you will, had I been smart enough or wise enough to even just call Tim and be like, yo, what do you think I should do here? Instead, I was like, yo, this is what we're going to do instead. And so, move fast in some things, but recognize that, hey, like there are times when you need to sit back and call on others to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Mikey, you hit on that too, in terms of, it sounds like you've surrounded yourself around like-minded people, whether if it's from the business side or from the industry side, but what prompted you to do that? What do you look for when you're trying to learn something new? Tell us about that journey.
Yeah, so we actually almost went bankrupt towards the end of 2018. I had a mountain of debt, and I was not focused on the right metrics in the business. I didn't know my numbers. I wasn't tracking my numbers. And so that kind of led me to a coaching group, and they got in there and they started kind of teaching us what metrics, every business has their own metrics to track. And so they started helping us find what are the metrics that are important to you to track. And so as I started kind of tracking the right numbers and trending in the right direction, now it kind of led me to, who's the right team, because I had people in place. And it's not their fault that they sucked at their job, but I had people that truly sucked at their job in our company. And so I started trying to give some of that back to them, trying to put some of the responsibility on them in the right way. And, I surrounded myself with a team that was willing to take ownership. And if they weren't willing to take ownership, I didn't even have to let them go. They just excused themselves because the extreme ownership approach of putting it back on them, letting them fail, but being there to guide them, through their failure. So that approach helped a lot. But being around like-minded people in my coaching group, being around like-minded people inside of my industry. So ponds, it's unique. We have certified aquascape contractors. So we've got a very tight-knit group. There's only about 300 companies in the country. So we're tight. And then in the coaching group, it's a bunch of similar like-minded business owners who are going in the same direction. And in that group, there's about 300 people, give or take, in that group. You find people who maybe think about things and have the same kind of perspective as you. And so you just kind of start to align with them and you start talking to them. And it's interesting, as I've figured out one section, I've moved on to another person, and I've started working with that person and kind of getting their perspective on stuff. And so I've moved through, like 6 or 7 accountability groups over the last, 3 years, because, you kind of get one thing kind of figured out, and it's like, well, that's not my challenge anymore. And I'm tired of talking about that challenge. Here's the next challenge that I'm dealing with. Let's go find somebody who's dealing with that challenge and what's their perspective on it.
That's interesting. I remember also telling people in the past, like, if you're an early stage company, and for example, and the other people in your group aren't that anymore or are still that, then you need to basically go to the next base so that you're talking to the right people, or else you're going to be sitting back talking about startup things when you're not in a startup phase anymore.
Yeah. And you're taking startup actions and
totally.
Was it being part of these groups that identified the fact that you had to learn how to say no? Or was that an internal discussion within your company to learn how to say no? That was one of the things that we advertised on the show, that you learn how to say no, and then that propelled your business forward. So what was the genesis of learning how to say no?
Yeah, so it's been an evolution of it. It didn't just all of a sudden happen like I'm, all of a sudden saying no. But when I had the numbers in front of me, and I could see that if we cut grass, or if we spread mulch, or if we did trimming bushes or stuff like that, there is no way that we can hit the margins that we need to hit. And so when you're literally looking at those numbers and you're paying your clients to be in their yard because you're paying your team, you're paying your overhead, you're paying stuff. When I'm literally paying out money to do a job, it's easy to say no. It's like, and then, when you have people ask for stuff that you don't want to be doing, and your team is going to give you a bunch of pushback, and your culture is not set up to do those kind of things. Again, it is easy to say no because you're going to get an earful from them if you're saying yes to something that they don't want to be doing.
The numbers don't lie. And I tell you, so going through business school, my negotiations class was probably the most impactful class that I took, because it's like, when you boil everything down to numbers, it takes all of your emotion out of it. It's either, you have your price, you have your reservation price, and it's either going to hit it or it's not. But at the end of the day, man, numbers don't lie with everything. Sales, projections, pick it. It just makes it so much easier.
Yeah.
What's something that we haven't talked about today that you want to talk about, or that you would, if you were to do shows like this on a regular basis, that you think that you would talk about?
I wouldn't put them in junk mail, right? I think the biggest thing, and this is something that I've recognized that this is what's allowed us to be successful and to over double the size of our company, and continue growth, strong growth, and to actually have a lot of money in the bank. And I'm not saying this to brag. I'm just saying, like, we've been successful. And the reason, I think the number one reason that we've been successful is I'm not a victim to the circumstances around me. I'm not a victim to what other people do. My team is not a victim to what other people on their team do. My team is not a victim to our clients. Our team is not a victim to 2020. And we will not be victims. We will, our direction is set. Our path may have to change and veer and go off in different, we might have to take different paths, but the direction and the course that we've set is set. And, we will find ways around all the obstacles that come in our way. But not being a victim to your circumstances, and because it's so easy to allow, to like, I can't think of a perfect example, but it would be like if you ordered a cookies and cream milkshake from Chick-fil-A, and they gave you the peach, and you're just like, blame it all on them or whatever. But in reality, you ordered the wrong thing on your phone, and you're trying to blame Chick-fil-A for screwing up your order, but in reality, you actually clicked the wrong button. I feel like that's what it's like to become a victim. Yeah, I could go on for hours about becoming a victim. But just, look in the mirror. The person that you're looking at in the mirror is, chances are that's the person that got you to where you are. And if you don't like what you see, you have the power to change it.
Well, I got a perfect example for you, right? And so Tim can attest to this. So people, New Year's resolutions are to get in shape, get fit, whatever, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? That was not my thing in 2020. It was not to do that, but it was to go run a marathon, right? And then run it with Tim, who runs like every freaking day, right? And then immediately after that, it was go run this Ironman, go train for this Ironman race that's going to happen in June, right? And then we all know what happened. So Tim and I run the marathon back in March of 2020. It's like the last, I think, actual official race before COVID hit. And then so we run that, and then I'm immediately going into Ironman training. Well, as we know, everything got closed at that point. Guess what I did not stop doing? I couldn't go to the pool anymore because the pool did close, but I still did everything else that I was supposed to do. When the race got canceled, in the middle of May, guess who didn't stop working out and kept training and did his own DIY race in September, which was supposed to be the new time frame that got pushed back, right? And so it's just like you're saying, like you put this thing on the damn board. This is what you want to do. If you're going to allow something to become an excuse as to why you can't do that, that's on you. Go look in the mirror. Right. And I love that, the aspect of it. It's like, there's been rainy days for Tim when he wants to run. He runs at least 2 miles a day for the last, I don't know, almost 3,000 days at this point. There's been some really crappy days out there, right? It's a heat index of 110 today. Who wants to go run? Right. But you know what? He's got this thing in his mind called the Boston Marathon that he's qualified for, that he's got to be ready for that. And you don't know what's going to happen on race day. And race day for you is just another day in the business, right? Or this big thing that you have in mind. And so I think all too often people allow these outside things to get in the way, myself included at times, right? But not on this, right? And so it's like, hey, like this is what I want to do. And I'm not going to let a damn thing get in the way, because this is what you're supposed to do. And so many people would just be like, I don't want to do that because the world tells me I don't have to right now. It's like, no, that's not the case. And so I appreciate that you said that. And, I appreciate Tim seeing what he's done over the years. What is that, 7-8 years now, Tim, that you've been running that? Like it's absurd. The math is so hard to do. He doesn't even want to do it in his head. Like it's that absurd, but he's like, I'm going to do this thing. You just do this thing. And it's like so many people outside whatever to get in the way. And it's just like, like, I guess you didn't really want it. And that's it.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
So, well, this has been a blast. Anything else you want to talk about?
I don't think so. I mean, I keep talking.
I love that cat picture too. That's cool. The cat and the tiger. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. That's one of my favorites. Yeah,
that's great. Tim?
No, Micah, I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's one of the few times that we have a guest that we've not met beforehand. I always find these to be probably some of my most favorite because I learn so much, and I've taken a lot away from this episode. So appreciate you sharing all your knowledge, and it's great to meet you, man.
Yeah,
you do look familiar though. Are you sure do I know you?
Last name is Miller, so.
Did you go to the family reunion at that park and that? Micah, it's been a blast. Thanks for walking us through a lot of what you guys have been doing over the years, and continued success. And don't let that excuse get in the way, because I know it won't. So
that's right.
Peace, y'all. See you guys next week. Cheers.
We'll see you.